Destroy the child. Corrupt them all.
Pedophile.
Right.
That guy he was like he is going to go down in history as the most notorious pedophile ever.
All right. Well,
I mean, he has surpassed all the main ones. You know, it's if his story were to completely get out, I mean, he's having sex 3 or 4 girls a day, as young as 11. You know, that we know of. Disgusting, and he did it as part of an operation for the Israeli Mossad. He was supposed to use sexual blackmail on people in positions of power to gain leverage for the state, but he had to dip into his own stash. The reason he was so good at recruiting these women was because he was personally motivated into raping them himself. And it's something he did over and over again. He had it really organized. He had modeling agencies. He had Wexner's modeling agency and his money. And that was a way of being able to filter and get the prettiest young girls and offer them jobs or offer to pay for their school or get some sort of leverage on them if they would just just give some massages, and they would escalate it. He's like, why don't you just, let me jack off while you massage me? And then on and on up until he would just rape them. And apparently, I know he's into the really, really little kids. He also had a very tiny penis, according to depositions, and an egg-shaped. That tear-shaped would be a better analogy, I guess. And so maybe he needed kids to feel like a man. Who knows what the psychology was, but he was definitely whoring these. Well, that's the wrong word. He was pimping them out to through his cohorts, Sarah Kellen and Ghislaine Maxwell and others, to prominent businessmen, people in the scientific community, politicians. And that includes governors, senators, presidents, like Bill Clinton and Hillary. She was a senator. You get
so
Bill
Hillary was in like lesbian stuff. Hillary or little boys.
There he is. She's into little girls. He was a con artist his whole life. So first thing he did was he got a job at a prestigious school, private school, where he said he went to Stanford. He didn't. He went to NYU and he didn't finish. He had no college degree, but he got a job teaching math at a high school where he was flirting with the daughter of Ace Greenberg of Bear Stearns. He worked there a couple years. The headmaster of the school was also into pedophilia. He lived with a 14-year-old, offered to pay her tuition and let her stay with him while his wife was dying of cancer, by the way, and he molested this girl, according to her. And there's pictures. She has produced pictures of herself at 14 years old living with the headmaster. His name was Gardner. And so that's who oversaw Epstein at his high school, at the Dalton School. And then he had a short stint there, and then Greenberg takes him under his wing. But in the 80s, he starts dating Ghislaine Maxwell, who introduced him to her father, notorious spy for Israel, Robert Maxwell. And I have this on a map back here. I don't know if that's visible or not. But
yeah, let me zoom in there. Okay.
Robert Maxwell, I'll move a little bit. He helped catch Jonathan Pollard. Jonathan Pollard is the Israeli whistleblower that took pictures of their illegal nuclear warheads and exposed them to the world through the Sunday Times in England or in Britain. And Maxwell also was a media mogul in Britain and got wind of it that Vanunu was going to these papers to tell this story. So he tells the Israelis, and they organized a honey trap. And they used the honey trap, and they caught him in Italy. And then he was shipped to be in solitary confinement for 11 years in Israel. They punished him for telling the truth.
Wait, Maxwell or Pollard? Isn't Pollard the guy who stole secrets from us? Or are you talking about Maxwell?
Pollard is a different spy. Maxwell's the one that caught Vanunu. Maxwell is a very notorious Israeli spy that not only did that, but first of all, when he passed away, his eulogy was read by Yitzhak Shamir, Prime Minister of Israel, and all 6 current or former Mossad chiefs were there to celebrate him, and said that he even things he'll never be known that they knew, that he had done for the state of Israel. His body was buried in Israel, and the Prime Minister read his eulogy. That's how important he was. All right. And yeah, Pollard is even, he's on the same level, probably even worse than Maxwell, maybe, in the damage he did to the United States. But Maxwell was huge, and he worked with a guy, and he's on the list here, Douglas Leese, in the Iran-Contra affair. And when his youngest daughter brings her boyfriend there, then in their whatever you want to call that weird relationship they had, to get him some work because he was poor and desperate to be rich, and they have a fancy term for that. But so he hooks him up with Douglas Leese, because Douglas Leese is the guy that was taking like up to 30% level bribes on the Tornadoes sold to Saudi Arabia after Israel blocked the sale of F-15s from the United States. They buy this other aircraft from the UK, and leases, and they need these parts because they're doubling in spare parts for airplanes that they're sending to Iran as contraband illegally with the green light from Uncle Sam and that whole Iran-Contra affair. So they wanted Epstein to get into the arms smuggling race, give him a little side money, simple projects, but he proved too incompetent. So he wasn't to do that. But Doug Leese introduced him to Stephen Hoffenberg, who was running a Ponzi scheme for insurance companies. And he was taking everybody's investments, and he was trying to buy out some airliners. Pan Am was one of them, but because of the Lockerbie scandal, that completely fell apart, and he lost his investments, and the Ponzi scheme all fell apart. But Epstein walked away clear, and Hoffenberger went to prison for a decade for it. But nothing happened to Jeffrey Epstein. He was protected because he's in with Maxwell and in with the Israeli Mossad. And they made sure, even though the Ponzi scheme was his creation, his orders, Stephen takes the fall. Epstein gets nothing. And then he worked on, and that deal went through John Lehman, by the way, who is he was the Secretary of the Navy for a little while, which is where Pollard was spying on us, by the way, and the Naval Intelligence. And he would end up becoming a commissioner for the 9/11 Commission.
Oh, wow.
But anyway, then he goes to Bear Stearns, and again, another Ponzi scheme. He set up this thing. It's on the bottom of my map here with Liquid Funding Ltd. He put up 40% of the capital for this this SIV. Is called a Structured Investment Vehicle in Bermuda, after Bear Stearns set up Bear Stearns Dublin to get around American regulations. And then that set up this liquid funding in Bermuda, which was being used to offload toxic assets from the mortgage-backed security crisis scandal. So what they'll do in plain English is, on their books, you'll have debt obligations that put you in debt, and then you have whatever, the opposite, which you're going to go into the black or into the red. And what they did is they have all these toxic assets that they couldn't liquidate because they were part of the subprime lending scandal, which were packaged in CDOs, nothing you have to know, but it was like packaging a bunch of bad mortgages together and selling that as one clump security with a good face. It's kind of like having a roll of $1 bills with a 20 on top. Looks like a roll of 20s, but underneath it's all garbage. And a lot of these people were not able to pay for their mortgages. So yeah, eventually you're going to get to seize their assets. Then you got to sell those, and you can't liquidate quickly, and da-da-da-da. So in order to keep borrowing and being able to lend more and more to expand this bubble, which there's moral hazard for, because they didn't care whether the lenders paid back or not, because they sold those securities to third parties. So if that person doesn't pay back, Party C is now screwed. Party B is fine, because all they did is made the loans, collected all these IOUs, sold those IOUs to someone else. So then when this person doesn't pay the IOU, this one's left with their dick in the wind. The person that sold the security already made their money, and they wanted to continue to do that. And to do that, they had to have good ratings and a top tier. And the way they did that was through structured investment vehicles, which Epstein created with Leslie Wexner's money. So all they would do is they would sell their bad and toxic assets to liquid funding, so their book looks clean. They don't have any debts, but liquid funding's super in the hole, right? And then they would get the rating agency to come inspect their books and give them a high rating, and then on the first of the month they would buy the assets back again and rinse and repeat, right? They would just
Right.
pawn them off, and then buy them back again. And in some of them too, to make matters worse, they were making commercial paper based on these toxic assets, which is totally illegal because you're supposed to have absolute top tier prime ratings to make commercial paper, which is just basically like a high interest loan that has to be paid back quickly. And that ended up in money markets. It ended up in Dreyfus Russell Investment, Frank Russell, excuse me, Dreyfus Money Market, and J.P. Morgan. And J.P. Morgan would come along and buy out Bear Stearns with the senior loan created by this Maiden Lane company, which was the New York Federal Reserve created. And then Maiden Lane pumped out $28 billion to J.P. Morgan's $1.2 billion. So 28 to 1, basically, to buy out all the toxic assets from Bear Stearns. And Epstein, nothing happens to him again. And he's just using other people's money. He was sponsored by the Mega Group, which is the Bronfmans and Wexner and all these prominent Zionists who made their fortunes selling illegal liquor, doing prohibition, and all these other illegal means. They created this group, a pro-Zionist think tank made up of Jewish billionaires. And more people have been added to this group over time. You've got Spielberg in there. You've got Michael Steinhardt, who's also been accused of harassing women, by the way. Spielberg and Hollywood have also been accused of man-boy loving and so on. But the founders, though, are the Bronfmans, who are the head of the World Zionist Congress and United Israel Appeal and all these pro-Zionist groups, and Les Wexner. And Les Wexner, who owns Victoria's Secret, which was being used as another modeling recruit for Epstein.
Right.
He's the real financial backbone for Epstein's shenanigans. I mean, he made him power of attorney. He gave him a $77 million house, like the biggest mansion in New York, went to Epstein from Les Wexner. And the Mega Group, they call themselves Mega because it's the nickname for the mega donors. Because despite what some people will say, there's no conspiracy of the Jews or something. It's not like, oh, all of these people are supporting Israel secretly all at once. And it's nothing like that. It's just a handful of very wealthy Zionist billionaires running the entire operation. And be damned what all the general Jewish population thinks, because they don't really matter. All that matters is if you get these billionaires using their philanthropies to launder money to get into AIPAC and Israeli pressure groups that are bribing Congress and pushing for positive media that we know help people who are obedient to Israel, then they win. But on top of that, they're using compromise tactics, and that's where you get the blackmail. Because you're talking about the richer someone is, the more and larger your bribe has to be to get them to move. Like if you're already a millionaire, a $30,000 bribe doesn't mean anything. It's just a huge risk and not a lot of money. Right. But blackmail, where you can lose everything, means a lot. On the opposite end is it's when someone's really poor, blackmail doesn't work. They'll just fight you or whatever. They have nothing to lose. But a bribe will go a long way. You wave 50 grand in front of someone's face that's practically homeless. They'll kill somebody. They'll do pretty much anything. Yeah. But with the rich, it's the opposite. You got to get blackmail. And what is the most effective form of blackmail? It's sexual blackmail. And what is the most effective form of sexual blackmail? It's pedophilia.
So what I'm taking from this is Epstein. He's been a con artist his whole life, like you said. He was basically an errand boy for Wexner for all these different things. Right. They said, okay, why don't you do this honeypot pedophile ring? The goal of this ring is to get politicians.
Well, no, they came up with that themselves. So Maxwell is the daughter is just as much of a pervert as Epstein, and so they weren't very good at the Ponzi scheme. They got caught. They weren't good at running arms. Other people got in trouble for that too. But they keep saving their golden boy because he's dating the daughter of a prominent Israeli spy.
And she loved him, right? She loved Jeffrey. Like, wasn't she in love?
She loved they don't love. They love the power they had over the people and stuff, because they're both raping kids together and sleeping with models and so on. So, according to the victim's testimony. And so that was where they found their niche. These little sexual perverts were good at that. So that became their thing. It's like, okay, they're really motivated into this. They like, but the Israelis kind of kept them at arm's length because they saw how out of control it was.
Mm-hmm.
And so he buys an island, Little St. Jeffrey, he called it, Little St. James, where John, excuse me, where he basically created a rape fantasy island. I mean, they had cameras all over the place, and he lived there, and he would import girls, and the air traffic controllers in St. Thomas, where he'd helicopter people over, flat out said he would get off the plane full of 11, 12-year-olds.
That is
all
crazy.
the time.
And so let me ask you this question. So
people like Glenn Dubin, Sarah Kellen and stuff, they were into kids. And there's testimony from Glenn Dubin's own butler and chef saying they witnessed 15-year-old girls and who said what had happened. And so some of these hedge fund managers of the tribe, they would just go there to play. But others like Prince Andrew, he slept with a 17-year-old after drinking all night. So it's kind of like they're with some girl, and it's usually a model or, on a model level, whatever. And she's 17 and you're drinking and
you can't tell. You can't really tell. I mean,
whatever, maybe she's 18 and you still shouldn't do it. But
right.
It's not like there's a big difference between 17 and 12.
No, it's huge.
Right. People will go, oh, it's all pedophilia. Like, yeah, it is, but come on. 8 is worse than 12 and 12 is worse than 17. You know what I mean? Like,
well,
but anyway,
in some states,
sometimes
right,
that happens.
In some states here, I think in the United States, I think the age of consent is 16 to have sex, 17. So you could argue these are adult-like teens, but prepubescent children,
it's still illegal to give them out.
Of course, yes. I'm not advocating go have sex with 16-year-olds. I'm just saying that prepubescent, not even at the mature age, because some people argue, for example, in Islam, oh well, Aisha, she had her period at 9, so Allah, made her have, but this is 12-year-old prepubescent children, and so really my thing was, you're saying that a lot of these people were into that. So how is it blackmail exactly if they wanted those things? Were they being recorded against their will?
Well, yes, they're being recorded against their will.
All right, that's what I wanted to know.
He had a camera, he had a control room even, where he had all these cameras everywhere.
This guy's a James Bond villain.
I think maybe he just likes to film himself doing it or whatever, but no, I mean, he actually got he had a secret camera and a clock that the police provided for him because he says, oh, I'm being robbed. I need some sort of incognito camera and I need to be able to hook it up. So the cops did it for him. And then he just kept adding cameras, and he had them everywhere. He had them in his bathroom. He had a prosthetic eye in his New York rape mansion. He had them, all over the place. And he would record these encounters and he would get information from the girls. Like, what's he into? Like, for example, Prince Andrew had a foot fetish. And so when that leaked out, like Fergie and the other people who he's actually with know he has a foot fetish. So how did he know that? Like you were messing around with Virginia Roberts and others. And, Prince Andrew was also visiting New York. And he's on film in the house. And Sarah Kellen's coming in and out of the door. And little kids are going in and out of the door. And they look like little kids too, They kind of report the 17 and 15-year-olds and stuff, which is bad. But there was much younger than that he's messing around with. He was sponsored a ballet school, and he's inviting students to his house, and he would get students to recruit other students. But another thing he did is he liked to own people. He liked to have leverage on people. So when he had that picture of Bill in the blue dress, pointing like that or whatever, that was a trophy.
Right.
The artist made a bunch of paintings like that, weird paintings, but he bought that one.
Bush with the 9/11 with the tower, what do you call it? With the paper planes and the blocks broken down. Do you see that picture? Yeah. So
yeah,
it's a little freaky stuff. These people have some strange, like Bohemian Grove and all that. But this guy, Epstein, when I looked at he had a big ass owl.
They have some like red shoes wearing Podesta type stuff.
Yeah, but even Epstein's island had like Illuminati symbolism, like the big owl, right? What the hell was that about? Is that tied into anything like this Illuminati?
I didn't know he had a big owl.
I think it's a big owl. If I look it up right now, I could probably find a picture of it. If
all right,
if chat wants
that would be Moloch. I mean, that goes into child sacrifice.
Yeah, I mean, I could quickly. Let me just quickly see Epstein Island. Let me just look Epstein Island owl. Let me see. Yeah,
the weird thing while you're looking that up,
there's a big ass owl,
the weirdest
dude.
occultic thing, okay,
it's huge.
he had a rape ranch in New Mexico,
peacocks.
which he already had the governor compromised, so he got to it just ignore zoning laws and stuff. And he was talking about, and he actually said this to prominent scientists, his idea of impregnating a bunch of women with his DNA to improve the human race.
So Epstein said this?
Yeah.
Oh, God.
He also wanted to freeze his brain and penis. This is a guy that wanted to live forever.
It's a small refrigerator.
Not the kind of type for suicide.
That's yeah. Well, we'll get into that. We'll get into that.
His little penis and his little brain. Like, he was dumb. You can look at this. I have this police report up on Rise 2 Cents, where Epstein is right. It's just basic information, name, this and that. He misspelled his name on the chalkboard, by the way, which I've seen people do, like new teachers. You don't write on a chalkboard the way you do on paper all the time, and they'll just forget a letter or whatever. I've seen that happen with new teachers, but he did misspell Epstein on his board, which was in a newspaper. Like, oh, look at this young bachelor, and you look behind him and it says Epstein, and he forgot the I. But when he was writing Virgin Islands, he spelled virgin with an E. Like, he couldn't. This is not some genius hedge fund whiz kid or something. This was a dope that dated the right person who got backed up by billionaires because he was willing to further Zionist interests and would never say no to anything, no matter how disgusting it was.
Yeah, I mean, and it seemed to me like this honeypot operation was about expanding to all. I mean, look, there's pictures with Trump, there's pictures with Bill. I mean, not just that, but all sorts of celebrities with Epstein all over the place.
Yeah, Trump hated him because they were trying to get Trump, because Trump's into models. He's into models of age, as far as I can tell. Yeah. He likes supermodels. That's kind of normal. But, if you're a billionaire and you want to hang out with models, I guess that's what a lot of them do, actually. But he had Mar-a-Lago, which the property adjacent to that used to be owned by Les Wexner.
Okay.
And it got passed to this guy called Grossman, who got in trouble with the law and had to liquidate it. And so it was a fire sale, but Trump was out of money. So and he knew Trump really wanted it because it was adjacent to his own property and he could expand Mar-a-Lago if he got it. But he was out, and they were making fun of him because in his image is, Donald Trump, the billionaire from New York, one of the richest men in America, and his brand and all. But actually, he lost a lot of money in bad investments in Atlantic City and the rest of it. And they used to say, "Oh, look at Trump, he's crying under the bed sheets because he's broke. We have to go bring him lunch." And they were making fun of this, in their words, dumb goy who had lost his money and was a fraud. And Epstein took Trump on a tour of the property that Epstein was about to buy with Wexner's money. And this must have infuriated Trump. But lo and behold, the Hyatt that he had invested in started making some good profits. And the Apprentice was re-signed. And so he pulled his money together and he bought that property. And Epstein did not get it. He outbid him by less than $1 million out of like 41 or something. And so Epstein was furious. He's like, "I'm going to expose you. You're not as rich as you say. And, you're broke now and da-da-da-da." And Trump said, "All right." So he looked into Epstein, and Epstein had tried to recruit young girls from Mar-a-Lago on Trump's estate. One of them was Virginia Roberts, and at the time she was like 14. And Maxwell's the one that recruited her. She was hanging out by the tennis locker room or something, and gave her a book about massage and say, "Hey, I know this wealthy guy that's looking for a traveling masseuse, and that's all you'd have to do." Kind of ropes her in, and this is a runaway from home and abused by her parents already, right, or father or something. So typical Mark. And she would end up living with them for years, and she's one of the principal plaintiffs against them now, and she's got all their dirt. And it's been corroborated. Like, the stuff she was saying, other witnesses have come and found, and the unsealed documents from the case from 2007 2008 are showing what they knew and how many other witnesses had come forward on this. And so you look through his black book. So everyone he's pictured with, like, he went after Elon Musk. He went after a lot of people that he has a photograph with or whatever, but that doesn't mean he got them,
Of course.
But the ones he got, he would definitely target people that had some sort of news of already hinting that they were that way, like Kevin Spacey and Woody Allen and Cosby and people that did get convicted, right, or, So he would go, "Oh, that was a right target," because we already know they're into little boys or they're into little kids or they're into raping people, like Polanski or something. And but also you see Israeli prime ministers like Ehud Barak visiting Epstein.
Mm-hmm.
Why does Ehud Barak need to visit, a hedge fund manager or whatever in America? Like, he was visiting because he was gathering the blackmail and intel that Epstein had, and he's probably playing around a little bit, considering that he spent the night in the adjacent apartments that were run by a real estate mogul named Mark Epstein, who's Jeff Epstein's brother, which is where he housed a lot of these MC2 models that were provided to him by Jean-Luc Brunel, who's another serial rapist. He used to pal around with Maxwell, and Brunel and Epstein would go around Paris and drug girls' drinks, and then have their way with them, in the limo, and just going around raping. And they're so wealthy and so well connected that nothing would happen. It's like the Kingpin from Daredevil. They're like, what? I own the cops. I own the judge. You can't do squat. And he proved that. I mean, that case in Florida where Barry Kirscher is just handing it to him. By the way, Barry got an award from the ADL.
Oh.
And Acosta and the rest of it. He got 15 months and then serves 8 and he gets reduced to 13. And then he gets 6 days a week on work release where he just goes back to his Palm Beach mansion and continues raping people.
That's so stupid.
And in the jail, he had the gall to buy a bunch of girls' underwear. Not women's underwear. Girls. He bought a bunch of little girl panties. That's what he bought at the prison. And then he went to work. Why does a grown man need a package of girls' panties, right? Packages and packages of little kid panties. That's what he wanted them to wear while they massaged their nipples or whatever.
Right.
And ironically, or, not really surprising to me, Jesse Staley of JP Morgan Chase and then later Barclays visits Epstein after he's been convicted of soliciting prostitution with a minor. He physically visits him in Florida. Now, why? You can't call him, why does he have to go in person to the mansion to see Epstein? Unless he's also fooling around with little kids. And if they get off on the rape and the power. Jesseline called these girls trash and garbage. A lot of Eastern Europeans they're importing in, and models, people they can lord over, just abusing these girls. And some of them couldn't even speak English, but they'd be like, do it or I'll take your passport away, or we're paying for your house, so we'll kick you out on the street unless you do this. So they comply. And maybe they do it once or whatever. He had a steady rotation of these little kids. He preyed on schools. He preyed on private schools, ballet centers, and he also had a long list of masseuses where he would have girls trained so they'd be better at it and then bring them in again. It's utterly disgusting, but
it is.
The fact that his lawyers, his financiers, and his connections to Israeli prime ministers, as well as the Mossad and spies. Ehud Barak was the head of the Mossad before he was prime minister, by the way. He lent Black Cube to Harvey Weinstein to harass the victims of Weinstein's sexual assault and rape, a leveraged rape that he did in Hollywood. So they're all covered for each other. And you've got to think, well, why? What's going on? I don't think Jews are just prone to raping kids or something. I think this must be an Israeli operation, and the reason for this depravity is because it's a mean of compromising people in high positions with sexual blackmail so that they can force them to be favorable to the Israeli state.
Okay.
And they were.
Well, all right. I have a super chat here from Samuel GWR asking a question. I think it's to you. What the F was up with the Ralph Report chat? Are memes just really cool and I am out of the loop? I don't know if that's like a funny super chat or is that
I didn't see the chat, so I didn't see any of the memes, so that's why I didn't react to any of them. I was just like, all I saw was like Ralph's logo or whatever. Mm-hmm. But to answer your question, yeah, you're just not cool and you didn't understand.
He doesn't get it. He doesn't get it. Okay.
You're not hip. You're not fluent in basement.
So to just fast forward after all these little things Epstein did, so he started dipping into his own stash. Was that the reason why he got caught, or because he was a dumbass?
That's why both. I mean, that's why a lot of drug dealers screw up is when they start dipping in their own stash, right? And he was doing that, and he did it so much that, what are you gonna do? Kill all these girls? Some of them, all of them are afraid, but some of them got out. And yeah, they know he owns the cops, and they know he's donated hundreds of thousands of dollars to the police in Palm Beach and everything. But you guess who blowed the whistle on him was Donald Trump for that, what I explained earlier. So they had another billionaire backing them up, although he didn't have money, but they didn't know that at the time. He ended up recovering, loan from his dad and a couple good investments, and he was on his way again. But Trump gets the cops on him, and they investigate. But it took him years because there's so many compromised cops, and the guy's so wealthy and so well connected. And even then, like, he didn't really get punished. He didn't go to jail. He had a conviction, but it didn't really hurt him. He came out and did business as usual. He's meeting with Bill Gates, back with Glenn Dubin, and of course, anyone else that's messing around with kids didn't care. They went right back to Epstein. So.
Well,
he went in, but he targeted presidents, he targeted governors, he targeted senators. They're in his black book, and you can see why they're important. You know why Richardson's important. And by the way, he was on the board of Genie Energy, drilling in the Stolen Heights, as was Larry Summers. And Larry Summers is pictured with Glenn Dubin and Bill Gates and Jeff Epstein. So, I mean, but he's of the tribe, and he worked, of course, in the Obama administration as well. He's not just on Genie Energy. So you see this, you see connections to the Khashoggis. You see the Crown Prince. The Crown Prince is in his black book. So it explains a lot of geopolitics and why they are always bending to the will of Israel. They've got these people compromised. And once someone's compromised, you don't do that to end their career. You don't say, "Oh, this guy's banging kids," and like Dennis Hastert or something after he'd already served his purpose. No, you purposely promote the people you have compromised, and you never tell on them so long as they obey.
Right.
You only throw someone under the bus when they disobey. So it's better to own someone than to out someone. So once they got somebody, once they got them on film, then they're theirs.
Yeah, they're actually more of an asset now. They're in control. I was actually surprised, though. I was expecting you to tell me Trump was involved with Epstein, but I'm glad to hear he wasn't, because already I voted for Trump, and I was...
I mean, there's plenty of other mafia stuff he's guilty of.
Sure, but I thought
he never banged little kids, and he hated Epstein, and Epstein hated him. So.
Okay, well, because there's pictures of Trump with him, and it's like, see, look, Trump is with Epstein too. I'm like, oh, that's guilty by association fallacy.
Well, that doesn't work. Because Trump's the one that told the police on him.
Right.
So if he was compromised, he wouldn't do that because that would bring himself down.
Right.
And immediately Epstein would have been like, "Well, Donald Trump did this and that." He didn't.
Well, did Epstein rat? I mean, look, we all know he was killed magically in a cell. Did he?
Right.
Was he able to rat on anyone before he was killed, or maybe sent back to Tel Aviv? What's your take on this? It seems to me
I mean, anytime there was somebody that would like Michael Vitter or Spitzer or people that were blowing the whistle on Wall Street and the housing bubble, people who had a conscience and did that, suddenly their scandal comes out. Oh, so it looks like Elliot Spitzer was messing around with an 18-year-old while he was married. At least she's of age or whatever, but that's an extramarital affair, and that did hurt him. And they went after Vitter, and who was also on the D.C. Madams list. That was another central blackmail operation, sexual blackmail and perverts. And they would out people from time to time. Hastert got outed another way, and he had been raping little boys since his days as a wrestling coach. But he'd already been Speaker of the House. He'd already served his purpose, and then he's at the end of his career and not useful anymore. So just to scare everyone else, they go, "Whoa, look at this," But it's not clear to me that was Epstein, but it was definitely Israel. They have multiple blackmail rings all deep inside the United States, so it's hard to tell which one belonged to whom. But they had leverage over the royal family. That Douglas Lease was working with Maxwell's father in arms deals. So, and why? It's to their own detriment. Well, it's not if they're hiding a closet, something in the closet as big as raping children.
So ultimately Epstein dipped into his own stash, went out of control, too wild, and then they said, all right, we got to get this guy out of here. So who ordered the hit? Was it Trump and his guys, Netanyahu?
Well, this is what's interesting, because Trump's son-in-law's father is guilty of sexual blackmail too. He set up honey traps on his own brother-in-law and business partners. And Charles Kushner, less professional at it than Epstein. He didn't own an island of rape or anything, but he did hire prostitutes to sleep with his political rivals in order to get rid of people. And he did set up Governor McGreevey with an Israeli national as his closet homosexual lover in order to manipulate him into appointing himself as the Port Authority chairman. Ended up going to the former president of AIPAC. So either way, it's always under their control, but they do fight over the crumbs. So you think, well, if Trump's own family through marriage is engaged in like Epstein light, why would he tell on Epstein a second time? Who was it in the FBI, or who was it like out of the blue in July? He gets off a plane that left from Paris and landed in New York, and the cops grab him, right? That was a shock. Him getting killed in prison was not a shock.
Right.
Him getting arrested in the first place was a shock. So the big question is, why now? We've known this minimal since 2007 at least.
Yeah, a decade at least. Yeah.
Right. And I think any good journalist could have put the mega connection together. I would hope. I've been writing about it since 2007. I've been writing about the mega group since before that, but there are even references to that in the case of Keith Weisman and Steve Rosen, who were caught as spying for AIPAC in the early 2000s. And one of their underlings went to prison. He fell on everything, Larry Franklin. But they were saying, we got to get this to Mega. And people were like, who's Mega? Who is that? Richard Pearl? Is that some prominent, neocon that's got the most sway? No, Mega was the mega donors, and they're talking about the Bronfmans and the Wexners and this clique of Zionist billionaires that really pull the strings. That's your Illuminati, if there is one. It's the mega group.
Right.
That's who's really controlling. It's not even really secret or behind the scenes. I mean, they do it. They rub it in your face in it. There's nothing secretive about it. There's just nothing you can do about it.
Right. What are you going to do about it? Tweet about it? Well, all right. I got 2 super chats I got to read off to you. One from Brett for $2,000. Thank you, Brett. And $2. Have you? Yeah, that'd be great. Have you guys heard of Mark Dugan? I guess that's to you because I don't know who the hell he is. Okay, so that's question number 1. And then
yeah, he's on this map as well. So
is
we'll
he?
Get to that.
Okay, and then Samuel GWR again. Thank you. Lee Stranahan, who I want to have on the show, by the way, from Fault Lines, and he said he would come on the show, but I don't know when. Radio is doing a Brett Kimberlin blog day next Tuesday. Y'all have any info to say about him? I guess, is he asking you what your take is on Lee Stranahan?
Well, if he comes on your show,
first Mark Dugan, and then Mark Dugan, you said is on the board right over there, and what's his?
Yeah, just look though. It's already 2:00. We just covered an hour like that.
Yeah, listen. I'll go on.
What I'll do is I'll say to Brett and others or whoever asked that question, this is available on ANC Report, and it's got notes, and I've even done like videos that accompany these things that walk through the whole shebang. The earliest maps didn't have Dugan. It didn't have Richardson or a lot of these things that came out in the documents that released the day before Epstein died. And then I put together some more there with like Ari Ben Menashe straight up said, and he was in the Mossad, that Epstein was brought into the Mossad. Mm-hmm. He also stayed 11 months at MCC, and he said it's impossible to kill yourself there.
Yeah, I was about the guy on Suicide Watch what happened exactly? And again, who ordered the hit? After you could answer that one after this whole thing happened. So what does the report said? He was in there, and then he was on Suicide Watch, So
this is what happened. Like, I think it was July 23rd. Don't quote me. You can look it up or whatever. But he was placed on Suicide Watch at first because there was some sort of assault. Either he assaulted himself or somebody assaulted him, but he had minor wounds on his neck. So they said he should go on Suicide Watch. Now, this may have been a ploy by himself to try and get out of the prison because he's still trying to get to be put on leave at his house. Because this is a guy that can't handle jail. He never really been to jail. Right. He had 6 days a week, 12 hours a day and work release last time. And even this time, he really wasn't there other than to sleep because he would just go and talk to his lawyers all day. He had the money to burn. So like 12 hours a day, he would go down and talk with them. He was even having sex. He would have a female lawyer come in and say, "Oh, I'm doing counsel," and just disappear for a while, and you know what he was doing. So he wasn't suffering in prison or anything. So, but maybe he was such a puss he couldn't even handle sleeping in jail. So he gets injured somehow. But this was all while they were pushing to let him do in-house arrest. And the judge says, "No way, you're a flight risk. You're connected to all these prominent people. We already found like CD-ROMs labeled, like girls and so-and-sos and like blank blank." So, and he had a fake passport with a Saudi Arabian address, even though the passport was from Austria, which actually links back up to the mega group because they were. That's a long story, but
Okay.
What's he doing? Why is he going to Spain? Why is he meeting with the new crown prince? What was going on there? Adnan Khashoggi was notorious for his own rape cruises, where he'd hire a bunch of prostitutes and they would go out in international waters and just abuse these women, like, pissing in their hair and pooing in their face and, making them eat their butthole and just the most degenerate stuff, a way they could abuse a woman, they were doing it. They got a lot of blonde girls from Europe. These Saudi Arabians would go there and just shit in their mouths and, slap them around and rape them and gang rape them. But they paid them, so technically legal. They were prostitutes or whatever, and they found some that were willing to do whatever. And, they left him in cages naked, and they, all this kind of stuff. He had these weird parties, and everyone knew it. That's the kind of people Epstein would keep around. He is the uncle, by the way, of Jamal Khashoggi, who's a very, very different guy, who was going against the Saudi Arabian government, and he ended up murdered and his body chopped up with a bone saw.
Yeah.
In the embassy in Turkey. And it's like, and the way they found him was through the Pegasus software, which was only made possible because Robert Maxwell stole Promise software from the Pentagon, which is what the Israelis based Pegasus on, which gave a backdoor to all these phones, especially iPhones, where they could track your every move. And a lot of Khashoggi's friends and cohorts were tracked by this software and had reported that. Edward Snowden reported on that recently even. And so because of the Israeli company NSO, the Saudis were able to go to NSO, who was using Pegasus, which was built on Promise, which was stolen from the United States, like all Israeli tech, and find Khashoggi and murder him. And they murdered him. But that was a dual effort between the NSO, a private Israeli kind of cyber pirate for hire, and the Saudi royals. And they murdered a journalist. And like Khashoggi or not, murder is murder.
But
he was about to get married.
But
fiance's waiting for him outside of the consulate, and of course he never came out.
Khashoggi, what did he have on these Israeli operatives? I guess, what is it?
He was really undermining Saudi Arabia, not Israel.
Okay.
But Saudi Arabia is a partner in crime with Israel.
Sure, absolutely, yeah.
They use Israeli tech to find and murder him. You can see the Saudis and the Israelis have teamed up to aid Al-Qaeda in Syria.
Yes.
The Saudis and Israelis teamed up to aid Al-Qaeda for 9/11. The Saudis and the Israelis are always working side by side. The Wahhabi and the Zionists, you'd think were polar opposites, but it isn't true. They're always on the same side.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, going...
For Iraq, for Syria, the war in Libya, they have his DNA. We have his body. He was buried in Florida. He was identified by his brother. Like, it is so complicated to fake someone's death and put a body double who's definitely dead and have the EMTs and stuff work on this other dead person's body. You'd have to get someone that looked like Epstein, murder them, and get them in his cell and get him out, and then have people discover the other body and work on it and not be able to revive him, and then fool his family and stupid.
Well,
they're basing that on some pictures of it. Look at his ear.
Yeah, look
at
his ear. Those could be photoshopped. No,
yeah, he just busted all the capillaries in his face because he was hanged.
Right.
And your nose will bend like that because he's got a big oxygen pipe pushed down his throat and pulling down on his lip. He died. They're not going to let him live in Tel Aviv. He's useless. He's got too much heat on him to be any use for them in the future. He had to die because he was a risk of plea bargaining, which he is a dead man switch, you know. If he really had a dead man switch, he never would have gone to prison in the first place. But he was in jail, and they murdered him, and it's clear because you got two cops that not only didn't check on him, but faked their logs to make it look like they did when they didn't. You have two surveillance cameras that just, lo and behold, they didn't work that day. You had him taken off of suicide watch on behest of his lawyers, who were compromised themselves. Alan Dershowitz was privy to, apparently he said he couldn't have raped anyone because he kept his underwear on. But
we'll get into Alan Dershowitz because I have questions for him
he
too.
Is a pure scumbag.
Yeah.
He defended Roman Polanski, a known rapist. He defended this Leibovitz guy that raped a little boy. He tried to defend the 5 dancing Israelis, but they never served papers to anyone because they weren't really serious about suing because of their ill treatment, because they really did not want that to go to court because everything would come out. It was just something they threatened and never did. But
weren't you
he was willing to
by the way,
them.
weren't you the one who got these photographs of these Israelis out? Was that you who requested
I requested the photos many times. They wouldn't give them to me because I live in Japan. I got the 1,800-page text document. Someone else got the photos, but it didn't matter because they're big white squares on their heads anyway.
Of course. They just.
But I mean, it's like we already had descriptions of them. Like, I don't know why people gotta see it. Like cops are saying it. The FBI says it. It's all written in the report. But your basic bitch has to see a picture, and even then, they need to see Epstein, clear high-res picture of him dead. Same thing with a plane hitting the Pentagon. The fact that there's a giant hole and debris from the plane and DNA from all the passengers doesn't matter. They want that crisp movie of a plane hitting, or they're just not going to believe it ever.
Correct.
Right? And it's like, there's only 5 frames released. No, there's only 5 frames that exist because a camera in the parking lot is designed to film people walking back and forth to their cars, not an airplane going 300 miles an hour in a split second across the parking lot and across the lawn. 5 frames is all there is.
Right.
But we know there's a plane because there's pieces of the fucking plane in the building. Doesn't matter. These guys have no deductive reasoning. It's like, where's the movie? If there's no picture, it didn't happen. Derp.
Well, I mean,
they definitely killed him. He had bones broken in his neck. You had his cellmate was moved out mysteriously, which is not supposed to happen.
Right.
Even if someone's recently taken off suicide watch, that's not the protocol. You have to have a lot of coincidences to have Epstein kill himself. And then kill himself how? He tied his sheet to the top bunk and leaned forward. What a crock.
Yeah.
And those sheets are so thin they'll tear. They're like that on purpose. He was murdered and he knew it. He just signed away his 1953 trust, and who knows if he even signed it or they just wrote his name on it. And then they killed him. The day before all this info had come out, and from Virginia Roberts, they unsealed the case, so he was screwed. He knew he wasn't getting out, and his next step was, okay, I'll plea bargain. I'll start telling on all these other people. And they said, no, you ain't. And they had him dead. Patrick Ho was in the same prison, by the way, who worked with Galupche and Fat Tony, and he was tried to launder money in Uganda and Chad. And Epstein and Maxwell have bragged about manipulating African dictators and this and that, but Ho was caught because something no one ever thought would happen. The Ugandans actually didn't take the bribe. He was offered millions. Said no, told on him, and he went to prison. So somebody that they had allowed to fall was in the prison with him and knew him. I'm not saying Patrick Ho killed him, but there is somebody that wanted to kill him who was in the same prison that would definitely have done it if they give him a green light. It's more likely his cellmate or even a cop could have done it. It doesn't. We're never going to find that out because the cameras are gone. Right. And no one's who's talking about this right now in mass media.
That's my point.
Is Jeff Zucker interested in Epstein? No. You want to know why?
Because the same.
His wife is hanging out with Ghislaine Maxwell. There are multiple pictures of parties of Jeff Zucker's wife and Ghislaine Maxwell hanging out like the best of friends. So CNN doesn't want to cover Epstein. Up, he died. That's it. You're all conspiracy.
Nobody's covering. That's why I wanted the show because.
Yeah, I know. You're right.
Nobody's covering this stuff, and I'm like,
but okay. I bet you if we dig, you'll find the same thing. Yeah. All these mass media moguls they're right in there with them.
I got 2 new super chats. Brett, by the way, it seems like he had to ask his question again, sadly, but I do appreciate for the donation there with the super chat. He said John Mark Duggan, Douggan, was the name of the cop I was talking about. He sought asylum in Russia. Sean Atwood had on him. Supposedly has some kind of case files. Do you know of this John Mark Duggan or Duggan?
John Duggan, no. I have to look into that.
Okay. Sorry, Brett. Sorry.
See, I don't know everything.
Okay, Doodle Squatch again. How long do you think it will take for this black operation to recover and start again? What do you think of that? It's probably multiple.
Well, they have redundancy, so they Lewinsky'd Clinton, that's for sure. And
oh yeah, absolutely.
This was major damage because all of them are on the run right now. Jean-Luc Brunel fled France, went to Brazil, so they knew that much. I would love for one of his cohorts to get caught and be forced to spill the beans and plea bargain, telling everyone else. That'd be a glorious day. But William Barr is not interested in really honestly pursuing this at all. He's a hardcore Zionist, and they're going to obey.
Mm-hmm.
But we know they had DC Madame before that. We've known about sexual blackmail. That's what the Mossad does. We know that some of the Israeli art students were honeypots when they were spying on the DEA, and even
because it got frozen. Is the stream down?
The feed?
Yeah, it says it's. The chat's still going. What happened here? Oh, here we go. Here we go. Okay, we're back. We are back. Okay, the Israeli Mossad is trying to stop this stream. Okay, all right. So, okay, all right. It's back, boys. That was strange. The second Ryan Dawson comes on, we have all sorts of things going on. All right. So where were we? You were saying, what were you saying before the stream cut out? It was about 15 seconds. It cut out, I think.
I was asking you if you're on Team Hogan or Team Flair. It's a very important question for me. No, you were saying how long is it going to take for them to recover?
Right.
I don't know. I know that this was a major blow, though.
Yeah.
And because it had to be. I mean, this was a massive multinational sexual blackmail ring that involved billionaires, and he had multiple properties. We know about Paris, Florida, New York, and New Mexico. He also had a little one in Colorado and something in Ohio. But the major things were New York and Palm Springs, and then New Mexico, and of course the island in the Caribbean. Those are the main ones. And then Paris, they waited like 4 weeks before they raided the property, so nothing was there when they got there. Duh. It's like, oh, here we come. We're coming soon. Better not have anything incriminating. And then they finally raided it, and of course, it had been completely whitewashed. Everything was gone. Furniture, everything gone. But if Epstein's in jail, who did that? Someone had to do that on his behalf.
Mm-hmm.
Someone working for him. So there are more cohorts that could be hunted down and should be.
Right.
But sadly, I don't think they will unless the media makes this a major issue again.
No, and they won't. They won't. What about, you said he had a brother, Mark Epstein. Do you think this guy was told to shut up or die, or he's scared, or what's up with this guy? I mean, isn't he a threat too? Does he know enough?
He has plausible deniability. He just provided housing for all these young girls, and he kind of I don't want to know what's going on in there.
Okay.
So he didn't do anything. It's not illegal to rent a house to a bunch of girls.
No, of course not. No.
It's sketchy. It's weird, but you can. And who's paying for that? Oh, your brother. Oh, why does he want to hang out with a bunch of 11-year-olds? I don't know. Maybe he really likes ballet or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, he definitely is one of these gross people. He knew Sarah Kellen was there, and he had to know the Prime Minister of Israel was visiting and staying in his houses. I mean, you would just know that. So he's guilty. I don't know if he raped any kids or whatever, but He helped facilitate it
Sure.
for Jeff Epstein.
He basically helped the pedophile ring. He facilitated a pedophile ring. All right, so let's get into where the hell is Ghislaine Maxwell now? She was in Florida having an In-N-Out burger, or someplace, California.
That picture was planted.
Planted, right? It had to be. It looked like it was mocking. And then she was found. I saw an article about her being in Brazil or something. Is this accurate? Is this bullshit? I mean, if she,
yeah, maybe
she's probably in no, she's probably in Tel Aviv, right? She's probably safe and sound with her father. If is he still alive? By the way, is her father?
No,
he's dead. No. Okay, so
he fell off his boat naked in the Canary Islands and drowned.
Okay, so someone took him out for sure.
He was trying to squeeze money out of the Mossad because he had all these debts for his own Ponzi scheme he did, stealing pension funds from people in Britain. And he was like, I'm gonna reveal ways and means in your operations if you don't give me this money. And they said, no, you're not. How about swim with the fishes?
So this is perfect. This is a perfect segue, because I remember when we spoke for an hour, you mentioned that you're like, Angelo. I'm like, well, who's calling the hits on Epstein?
Rupert Murdoch was wondering about, because he had a rival with Murdoch, right?
Yeah.
Murdoch is also on Sky News and a media mogul, also with the UK as well as the US with Fox, And Rupert Murdoch said he wanted to know because it wasn't him. It's a way of him saying it wasn't me, because he was like, well, who killed Maxwell? And they're like, I don't know. And he stormed off. He was done with lunch and left. He just wanted to know who killed his rival. But that may have been just being like, see, it wasn't me. I'm asking who did it. But we know that Murdoch was a financial backbone for Boris Berezovsky that helped Berezovsky become a billionaire in Russia. And when he was getting exiled and ORT was being investigated, Murdoch came in for the bailout. So we know that he's worked with the guys from Bank, and also most of the notorious oligarchs of Russia were tied to Rupert Murdoch. And he's an Australian, but he owns Sky News, Fox News. He's sort of the right-wing Zionism. And Maxwell was more of the left-wing Zionism, but still a Zionist nonetheless. And they do... I use this analogy. I stole it from Richard Black, who was talking about Al-Qaeda in Syria and how sometimes Al-Nusra Front and Al-Sham will fight with each other. But that's no different than drug cartels competing over the market, right? Right. At the end of the day, they're all drug dealers. They're all selling drugs. But they will compete with each other over territory and drugs and stuff. And Murdoch was in competition with Maxwell over control of media in Britain, and did win that, by the way. Maxwell was never as influential as Murdoch.
So this goes against the whole Jew hive mind. They're all in on it. There's actually cartels of Zionists. It's cartels of left-wing globalists versus Zionist supremacists. It's like you just said. It's not this hive mind. They all want the same thing, but when it comes to who gets it, they're killing each other. Essentially, they're assassinating each other. They're blackmailing each other. It's just a mafia. It's a mafia movie, just like Goodfellas, Casino. It's all the same. It's corruption. It's not really a genetic thing.
It's just high level. It's very wealthy mafia figures. That's all. They all engage in criminal acts.
Yeah.
That film I just released called Trump's Zionist Ball and Chain, God's Not a Real Estate Agent, is just, it details all the white collar crime as much as possible in 1 hour. And it's just again and again and again what they're doing is all this sleazy, organized crime, white-collar business shenanigans, which almost always involve some sort of blackmail. Usually sexual. So I'm fading, though. I've been up all night and day, and I will come back on. We're not even halfway done talking about Epstein, but I am starting to fall asleep. So
Make fun of me all you want. This is their plan, people. They're frickin' interdimensional invaders.